done, buy that brand new car, or just enable you to kick back and relax for the rest of the year. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Now, it wasn't just us who celebrated the big football match on Saturday. Prince William was in the crowd in Dusseldorf and couldn't help but show his relief when England scored.
And over the weekend, it was also announced that the Prince of Wales is set to star in a new two-part documentary on ITV covering his mission to try and eradicate homelessness.
Well, let's talk about this and much, much more with Angela Levin, royal biographer, who joins us in the studio. I'm glad to hear that this documentary's been made, Angela, because I worried that he made this big announcement about homelessness and I thought, goodness me, here is somebody who could maybe do something about this. And then it's all seemed to have gone quiet.
He's been very busy with it, actually. He's gone all over the country to see different areas and how they have been, and to try and change people's attitude to homelessness, that they're people who need help and want to get back into a normal life. I think it was 2009, he slept out in the street to see for himself what it was like. And he also helped people who are selling the magazines, the big issue. So I think he was actually just covering the basic about what it was like for him and how he can now help other people. He and Catherine are putting £3 million straight away into that, and it's going to
Where
be...
does that money come from?
Their own foundation, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so they're not taking it from our tax or anybody else's. He wants to do this so badly because of his mother. You know, she took them to see people who were homeless. And even if he can't do everyone, he can help people be kind and understanding.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewbs, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dewbs Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, I'm Sophia Wensler from the GB Newsroom. At 11 o'clock, your top story this hour. The boss of cybersecurity firm CrowdStrike, which is responsible for worldwide IT outages, admits it could be some time before all systems are back up and running. More than 5,000 flights at many world's airports have been grounded since early this morning, with airlines unable to complete check-ins. Banks, supermarkets, most GP clinics and even major TV and radio stations are among the many who've been knocked offline. Those travelling by rail were also affected, with TransPennine Express, Thameslink and Southern among those who reported disruption. CrowdStrike CEO says it's not related to a security incident or a cyber attack. The Home Secretary has branded violent disorder that broke out on the streets of Leeds as audacious criminality. 5 people have now been arrested after trouble flared in the Hare Hills area last night, with vehicles set ablaze and a police car overturned. It's understood the riots were linked to local children being taken into care, with fears tensions could boil over again tonight. Yvette Cooper says those responsible for violent disorder in Leeds should feel the full force of the law.
been talking to West Yorkshire police officers and also local community leaders about the action they're now taking in response to those unacceptable scenes of disorder and criminality that we saw last night. The community is working very closely together in response to what was a local child protection incident, but it's really important that the community can feel safe on the streets and also that the perpetrators feel the full force of the law.
In other news, journalist Evan Gershkovich has been sentenced to 16 years behind bars after a Russian court found him guilty of espionage. The Wall Street Journal reporter has already been held in a Moscow prison for 16 months on charges of spying. Prosecutors say the 32-year-old was caught gathering secret information for the CIA, though no information to back up the allegations has been made public. President Biden has accused the Kremlin of hostage diplomacy and says he's committed to bringing Evan home. And health alerts are in place across the country as the summer sun finally arrived. Experts are urging people to take precautions, with warnings in place in many parts of England until 11 o'clock tomorrow night. Today has officially been the hottest day of the year so far, with temperature of 31.9 degrees recorded at St James's Park in central London. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sophia Wensler, more in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello and welcome to Headliners. I'm Andrew Doyle. I'm taking you on a journey through Saturday's newspapers with my two comedy crewmates, Leo Kearse and Steve N. Allen. Do you like the nautical introduction there? Yeah. Is that a salute?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're a military man, aren't you, Steve?
Oh, I thought that was all Star Trek, though you were talking about crewmates.
Oh, I see.
I thought that's right up my street.
That's where your mind goes.
Not wearing a red shirt, I'll get through this one.
How are you, Leo?
Yeah, I'm not bad. I'm no stranger to seamen.
OK, let's have a look at the front covers before we crack on. So Saturday's Daily Mail is leading with Global IT Meltdown shows peril of going cashless. We'll get to that in a moment. The Telegraph, holidays in chaos after global IT meltdown. This seems to be the theme. The Times has that same story. IT companies' era could be terminal for getaways. The Mirror, day the world stood still. They've gone with the melodramatic approach. The Express has got, how on earth did digital pandemic paralyse the world? Good question. And the Daily Star, computer says no. Those were your front covers. Right then, we're going to kick off with the Daily Mail. Leo, what are they leading? Well, we know what they're leading with, the same story as everyone else.
Yeah, they managed to get it out. Probably wrote it on a typewriter. It's global IT meltdown shows peril of going cashless. So cashless is a thing. It's like little bits of paper people used to use to exchange for goods and services. Yeah, now apparently half of Britons leave their house with only their phones as a means of payment. We call those people women. And it means, you know, without the systems working, you've actually got to swap your phone for whatever you're buying. So unless you're buying
bartering, right?
Yeah. So unless you know what you're getting is the same value as an iPhone 14, then it's not an efficient system. I don't totally understand what caused this IT meltdown. There's a cybersecurity update that rolled out and didn't, when it hit Windows computers, they crashed or whatever. Some people on Twitter have been speculating that it's because of diversity, equity and inclusion.
But of course you wouldn't like to speculate yourself. You're merely reporting on the speculations of others.
Oh no, I was one of those people.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
But it's interesting, these companies that are all like, oh, we're so focused on diversity, equity and inclusion. It's like, well, should you not just be focused on getting the job done and maybe a meritocratic hiring system and, you know, having that as your core business?
No, I want to be surrounded by a diverse group of people, not necessarily the best group of people. That's hence the headline. Steve, you know a lot about this kind of technical stuff. Is there a way...
with no friends, yeah.
That's right. I wasn't going to say it, but could you explain to us in a non-boring way why this has happened?
No.
OK, could you explain to us in a semi-boring way?
Yes. You need these updates all the time. They patch problems that stop hackers doing stuff, malware getting into your computers. The cyber security firm had to roll out an update, but these days there are so many updates, they're all automated.
Yes.
So in theory, you should roll it out and test it and then release it, like a good old service pack in the good old days. But there's too many of them, so they just happen. This one caused a problem so that Windows thought it wasn't configured properly, wouldn't turn on. The solution, they then, within a few hours, they were saying, we've got a patch for you, don't worry. As if that makes it easy. Yeah, just log on to the website. Oh, no, wait a minute, your computer doesn't turn on. So you've got to find a way, probably just booting it into safe mode, or using Linux. Everyone, get on Linux.
Or what about Apple? Why don't you stick to Apple? Because I believe Apple is virus-free.
No, it's not. No, there's a JavaScript one, I think, there's a JavaScript exploit. I know that'll be gone these days.
I mean, all of this reminds me of the Y2K thing. This is like what would have happened if that happened.
Yeah, it kind of is, although planes didn't fall out of the sky.
Oh, did they?
And I've got to be honest, as a Scottish person living in London, I'm looking forward to a cashless society because, you know, as a Scot trying to spend Scottish money. And somebody stopped me in the supermarket. The cashier was like, oh, is this real? He holds up my Scottish £20 note, the biggest denomination you can get in Scotland.
Yes.
So as if I could fake money, I'd fake Scottish money.
Yeah, no, you wouldn't, would you? But no shops accepted. And this is the thing about this, Steve, is... Yeah. The way the Mail is spinning this is about perhaps we should go back to a cash-based society.
Yeah, the good old days when you'd buy a flight in cash at the check-in, or what was the other one? The GPs. Yeah, the good old cash would help the GP. No, because it was trains, GPs and airports. They were all crippled. How did we notice the difference? One of them was Transpennine Express. That barely moves anyway, so the fact that they managed to work it out... No, look, on days like this incredibly rare event, having cash would solve the problem, but you'd have a worse economy because it'd be very difficult to do all of this stuff that requires technology these days.
Well, I was in Vegas the other week, and at the conference I was at, they were spending these sort of notes made of gold, where the notes themselves contained the amount of gold that is the value of the note.
Right.
What about that?
Yeah, that'll really speed things up when you're trying to get on your train. Like, when I get a train, there's an app where you just buy the ticket, beep, scan the barcode, go in. There's no queuing anymore. So, yeah, for the one day, there's a problem. And, by the way, were you putting these gold things in the stripper's garter? Is that what you did with it, because you're in Vegas?
I mean, I wouldn't do something so degenerate.
You get someone to put it in the garter for you.
But other people certainly would. Anyway, we're going to move on that rather strange note, to the next paper, which is The Times. And Steve, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, The Times have got a few stories. The picture at the top, Laura Kenny says, I wanted a baby more than a gold medal. That would be a terrible thing to win at an Olympics, though, wouldn't it? Imagine, it feels wrong.
It would be weighty round the neck.
Yeah, and at least you can trade that gold in for things during an IT breakdown.
Oh, you can trade babies in some cultures.
But it's not... You know, you took a baby in a stripper's garter, and it seems ruins the mood for some people. Of course they talk about the IT stuff, of course they do. Yeah. But 5.5% public pay sector pay rise dilemma. Millions of public sector workers, including teachers and nurses, should be given an above-inflation pay rise, according to an independent review. I don't think it's going to happen because... well, they've already received some money anyway, which they say has been, like, supped up by inflation. This will be a thing where if you just find a number lower than that, the unions won't hate Labour that much because at least they're not the Tories, and Labour will be able to say, well, we didn't pay 5.5%.
But isn't the problem here that, Labour has pledged to do something about the low wages, but on the other hand, this independent pay review body has said it should be higher than you had anticipated, and this is kind of leaving Rachel Reeves in a bit of a pickle?
Yeah, absolutely. Labour were just elected mainly by, these work-shy public sector apparatchiks who are like, squeeze the working people so you can give us, squeeze more of their gold out and give it to us.
Do you mean underpaid teachers and nurses? I think that's what you're referring to.
If you read The Guardian, you might want to say that. I prefer soulless leeches. Soulless, dull apparatchiks.
I was one of those leeches once. I was a teacher. I was definitely underpaid.
Yeah.
How about
that? Yeah, well, I used to work in the public sector, and that's what turned me right-wing, because I saw the amount of waste and profligacy that was going on. And I think, because they're looking at... Not everybody's getting the same level of pay rise. I think doctors are looking at a 12.5% pay rise, which is obviously going to get, make the other apparatchiks upset that they're not getting as much.
Yeah, but, doctors get quite a lot already. I mean, the thing is, Steve, should it not be the case that in terms of education, in terms of teachers, that should be the priority for society? If you pay them properly, you raise the level of competition, you increase the quality of teaching, that has a trickle-down effect of virtually every other aspect of societal cohesion.
Yes, but there's not a limitless amount of money, and there are other ways to improve the standard of education. So when you're realising there's no money left, trying to find other way, change your national curriculum, which I think we come on to later on today. But things like that can improve standards of teaching.
But the problem is that we know, for instance, from the Michaela School, which I always go on about, they get the highest results in the country with inner-city kids who can't afford to have private education. But no one wants to take on board those approaches because they see them as too conservative. So is anything going to change?
No, I mean, I think while our public sector is sort of gripped by left-wing ideologues, the necessary changes that would work, that are proven to work, although maybe Labour will be the people to push it forward. Because, I mean, Wes Streeting has looked at, what's working in individual NHS trusts, individual hospitals, and said, well, let's replicate that across the NHS. So if they do that with education, maybe it'll work.
Maybe. We're going to have a look at the front cover of The Telegraph. They've also, of course, got this international meltdown with IT and a picture of Miriam Margolyes, who doesn't like that. But actually, they've got another article here too. What's that?
Yeah, so Biden vows to fight on as party gears up to replace him. Joe Biden insists he will stay in the race despite allies urging him to pass the torch.
Not just allies, Barack Obama secretly plotting to get rid of it.
Yeah. Looks like they tried to assassinate the wrong person. They're going to have to hire another hitman. Or hit person. Sorry, I forgot their left.
Well, let's hope that they don't do that. But surely he should step down. I mean, he is not in a good way. And basically no Democrats want him to run.
Well, people say that he's not in a good way, but I've been reliably informed by The Guardian that those are, in fact, far-right conspiracy theories and deep fakes and cheap fakes.
Yeah, the whole live debate was a big deep fake.
Yeah, and everything Joe Biden does and the obvious gaffes that he makes in his own videos.
Yes.
In his own... like when he almost said, make America great again the other day. And he also said... He said a great one. He said, the attempted assassination was terrible. Like, in this country, we settled things at the battle box.
He did say the
battle box. And then he
box.
Repeated it.
He did say battle box twice. But, the thing is, I find it quite sad at this point. The guy is obviously not... he said that Trump was his vice president. Didn't he call himself the first black woman to... I don't know.
But no, that was clever, because now you criticise him, you're being racist, Andrew. So...
I see. Well, I mean, he can identify as however he wants. I don't mind. But he shouldn't identify as the president.
Yeah, he shouldn't. And it's not going to happen, is it? I think loads of Democrats think it's not going to happen. If you look at the actuaries, they probably think there's not a chance of him making it that long either. No. So we're now just in this weird holding pattern where he refuses to. I think he said, even if God Almighty told him to quit, he might. I think God's sending quite a few signals already. You got COVID when COVID was gone, man. This is clearly a signal from high on above.
Yes, and your rival survived an assassination attempt. I mean, the thing, it's just, at this point, he cannot win.
Yeah.
Let's be honest about that. But who could? They're talking about maybe Michelle Obama swooping in at the last minute, or even George Clooney. I mean, that would shake things up a bit.
Yeah, and the trouble with George Clooney and all the people on the left, the Hollywood celebrities who support the Democrats, is they love to talk about how great the Democrats are, but they don't actually want to be in the hot seat, getting all the abuse, having to do all the work. They just want to put on a hat and pretend they're somebody in a film.
It is tough. But to be honest, since Hulk Hogan ripped his shirt off, I think Trump's got it in the bag.
Yeah.
I mean, can't come back from that.
That's the realest American in the whole of America.
In the old days, it was Clint Eastwood talking to an empty chair, and now they've got Hulk Hogan doing stuff on there. They've raised their game.
They have raised their game. Good for them. Well, look, that's what we've got time for in this section. But join us after these adverts for Leeds Not United, Taxpayer to Terrorist, and Badenoch Knox Rayner. See you there.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Now, we've got a story and a half to tell you and bring you now. Our very own GB News political correspondent, who we love very much, Catherine Foster, joins us in the studio, and she's smiling, but she wasn't smiling for the past few days.
Two of her sons, Matthew and Andrew, were reported missing in Bali.
I got a text from a friend saying, can you give us a call, a bit worried about them. Then spoke to a girl they'd befriended who was in Sweden, but they'd met on their travels. And she told me that they'd gone up the mountain. By the time I found out, they'd been missing for 30 hours. They'd gone up the mountain on the Tuesday night, British time. This was the Thursday morning, without a guide. And they'd told her it was really hard. And she told them to turn back, but they hadn't. And they'd sent screenshots from this app with this trail that they were following on the app, screenshots of the app in case there was a problem, and a Snapchat of a Matthew avatar at the top. And she said, I know they made it to the top because I could see that his phone had nearly died. But the trail had actually closed many years ago. So the app we will need to make sure that that gets taken off the app. But, you know, technology saved them in the end because it was the screenshots and it was the messages that they'd sent, but they should never have been without a guide.
But what were you doing during those 30 hours that Mum couldn't, when the phone died and Mum couldn't get in touch? Where were you? What were you up to?
Well, we were trying to figure out the best course of action because it started to pour with rain. The amount of rain created a river, like a stream.
Yeah.
We were like, oh,
yeah,
let's follow the stream downhill, and then the sun set, and we just had to like sleep in the bushes in the jungle.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss my big opinion. Mark meets and my take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Go and get another glass of that bubbly, you've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. It's your first look at Saturday's newspapers. I'm Andrew Doyle. I'm joined by these comedy specimens, Leo Kearse and Steve N. Allen. Let's start with Saturday's Guardian. Leo, this story's a riot.
Yeah, quite. So this is about the riots in Leeds, at Harefield in Leeds last night. We all saw the pictures. There were buses on fire, police cars flipped, thousands of people out in the streets rioting, you know, starting the fires and stuff. And the police turned up and were actually sort of... the footage that I saw, the police turned up and then left.
They left.
Because there was too much. It was too much of a... Which really worries me about, you know, what sort of state the country is in. If just, like, one riot can be too much for the police. What if the riots join up? What if, you know, this gets out of hand and spreads?
Don't worry about it, Leo, because, you know, if an autistic child suggests that a police officer looks like their lesbian grandmother, they'll kick the door down.
Well, they've got lots of officers when it's, you know, if it's a middle-class old lady who, you know, is praying silently in her head on the street, or if it's somebody who's retweeted a transphobic limerick, then they can scramble all units. But when they actually, you know, want to get their hands dirty, it doesn't happen.
What's happened here? Well, I mean, we know that a child was taken away by a family.
So
right?
A baby, apparently... Well, all the children were taken away from a family, which is apparently a Roma family.
Yeah.
And that was misreported as Romanian by a lot of people on Twitter. But then, you know, the rioting spread. And, I mean, this article is in The Guardian. So The Guardian are obviously spinning it as, you know, we're in it together. How the unrest in Leeds escalated and was defused. And then they have this whole thing about, you know, isn't it wonderful, the community? You know, some people from the community came to try and put the fires out as if, oh, what a wonderful example of multicultural success. And,
that's great.
You know,
it is,
like, what about the riot?
A good news story.
What about the riot?
No, Leo, we're all coming together to, you know, stop the riots.
It's literally
Beautiful
like,
stuff.
you know that Norm Macdonald tweet where he says, you know, my biggest fear is, you know, what if a Muslim detonated a bomb and killed 50 million Americans? I mean, imagine the backlash against peaceful Muslims. It's very much that tweet turned into an entire article.
What do you think of this, Steve? Because it is disturbing, isn't it? Yeah. Not, well, on two fronts. The fact that it happened at all, the fact that people are rioting on the streets, but also that the police don't appear to be doing anything about it.
Yes, almost regardless of the cause, you need to have a system where the police can stop a riot.
Right. Yeah. Pretty basic stuff.
It's one of their... Yeah, it should be page one of stuff you want the police to do in a society, is to protect the society, and that includes from riots. You're legally not allowed to riot, so that should be shut down.
Why aren't they doing it?
Well, it does seem like a numbers thing, doesn't it? It's numbers versus health and safety. Oh, we can't possibly go into that riot. There's a bus on fire.
Yeah, look at the slope on that roof. I'm not getting on that.
But it's also true. Look, I like to think I'm the person who can find, like, the calm middle ground way through a story without, you know, deliberately trying to whip people up, because that's your expertise, and why should I don't step on your toes? But I was thinking this on the way in. If the police came along, or the services came along and took my children, there is no community around me that would kick off and have a riot. And that's an interesting thought, isn't it? That's what we're up against.
Well, it looked to me like there were lots of opportunists here who perhaps didn't care all that much about the family and their concerns.
Yeah, and didn't care much about being filmed, literally trying to set fire to a bus. Reaching in, clearly identified, no mask on.
Very brazen.
So, yeah, very, very brazen, you know, shows the level. I mean, some communities, apparently the police just have a sort of hands-off approach, and the authorities have a hands-off approach. But I think we need to question, you know, what's going on in Britain that's causing this, that's leading to this happening.
Well, we've got to move on to Saturday's Mail now, and this group, UNRWA,
yes.
From what was it? The Thundercats.
Is that what it is? Mumra, you're thinking? Yeah.
I'm thinking of Mumra.
It did live for a while, didn't it? Yeah. So this is David Lammy says Britain will restart funding UN aid body in Gaza with 21 million as Foreign Secretary reverses pause prompted by unsubstantiated claims that staff are involved in Hamas terror. So this is UNRWA. The W silence. I don't know what all the letters stand for, but it's someone with attitude. You know that
it's a UN body that has been accused of having a small number of Hamas sympathisers within its ranks.
I think it's quite a big
not
proportion.
Just sympathisers, being involved.
I think it was around 12.
And actually
12,
involved in the these are not just sympathisers, but people who actually got involved in the terror and slaughtering civilians.
Yeah, well, Lammy is saying that those were unsubstantiated allegations, and that's why he's making the funding happen.
Even if they're... Well, it's not just that they're unsubstantiated. There's then an independent report into this body that has come up with recommendations of changes that need to be made to keep it neutral. Well, if you can come up with changes that need to be made, that's not exonerating this group, is it? That's saying something is wrong, something has gone awry. So even though you don't necessarily have evidence, look, it seems a little bit rotten. There's claims that...
OK, so at the moment, there is no suggestion that they have found that these people definitively did not take part in the atrocity. Is that right?
And they have definitely found evidence of... I mean, Tory MP Richard Holden raised these concerns with David Lammy. He said UNRWA schools have been repeatedly used by terrorists to store weapons and launch attacks from.
OK.
And they've found, they've found evidence of electricity being used, the facilities being shared almost. And it's not like anybody's working at these UNRWA facilities that's like, oh, do you think there's Hamas in the basement? Like, they know.
So this is definitely a problem because, I mean, we had the Wall Street Journal reporting on intelligence dossiers which suggested that up to 10% of UNRWA's staff had connections to Islamist groups. As you say, the schools, now obviously UNRWA is providing a lot of the schools and education throughout Gaza, but we know that a significant portion of those teachers have been praising Hamas on Telegram and this kind of thing. So there's something rotten there.
Yes.
Wouldn't Lammy be better off exercising a little bit of caution until we have definitive answers?
But your flip side is that who else can provide the conduits for the aid that's needed right now? So what you've got is a tricky situation. You need to possibly use their system, that infrastructure, whilst at the same time trying to reform it or replace it, have a body that can do this work. But at this moment, you kind of need them to facilitate things.
OK, a bit tricky, that one. Then we're going to move on to the Express now, and Kemi Badenoch is turning agony aunt.
Yeah, so Kemi Badenoch warns Angela Rayner she's been stitched up by Labour in a brutal speech. So she tore into Labour's housing proposals, warning Angela Rayner that she's been set up as a fall guy by Keir Starmer. There's already the sort of rivalry between Starmer and Rayner coming into play here. But Labour, got into power. They said, we're going to build 1.5 million new homes. That's 800 new homes a day over the course of their being in government.
Can you build a home in a day?
It's almost like it's an Amish.
Oh, it's an average?
Yeah.
No, they did it in that film Witness. All the Amish people, they'll probably just get some Amish builders.
Good for them.
Over. Yeah, it'll be a different kind of bearded people coming into the UK. But yeah, basically...
under there, that
they might leave us. You know what I mean? Actually, they do that in some... I've seen that in Afghanistan. But... I'm not saying they're Amish over there, though. Apparently, Amish are going to be the biggest... Their fertility rate is, like, over 7.
Really?
So they're going to be, in, like, 100 years, they're going to be the biggest group in America.
They haven't got computers or anything. They've got nothing else to do.
Yeah. So that's all they do. But that's kind of reassuring for the future. We're heading for an Amish... paradise.
Actually, that is good. Amish paradise. Doesn't that hit like
Coolio? But yeah, so Labour have promised, all these houses, they're going to be built on Greenbelt land. Yeah. But then a lot of Labour votes came from Greenbelt land. Previously, they got 17% of the votes in the Greenbelt. This time around, they got half of the votes. Those people, won't necessarily want a big tower block full of randoms just popping up next to them.
And Kemi Badenoch is suggesting that Rayner hasn't really come up with any of these ideas. They've been foisted upon her.
Yeah.
And And so, you know, I haven't watched the speech, but reading the account, it seems that there's a lot of trash talk and sass going down. You know,
you should watch the clip because there is so much attitude. Kemi is so patronising. I remember thinking, how can you be that patronising when you've just had your ass handed to you in an election? Well, I'll know what you do wrong. Well, whatever you did didn't win you anything either, because you just tried to build some houses, failed to build some houses, and lost an election with the worst loss going, and you're standing there giving it some chew.
Yeah, but Kemi won her seat.
Well, so did Angela. You know what? She won a seat. There weren't that many Tories who managed to. I was surprised at this level of trash talk after such a huge
I think
loss.
more sass in the House of Commons, rather than all the old-fashioned jeering. You know, let's make it a bit more waspish sass. I'm all about that. Let's move on to the Times now. We've got some inconvenient facts for our favourite fox thumper.
Lawyers accused of dangerous and false trans suicide claims. So my theme of the night is if it can be asserted without evidence, it can be refuted without evidence.
Yes.
Classic bit of Hitchens. So activist lawyers are spreading distressing and dangerous claims that transgender children will kill themselves because of the ban on puberty blockers.
Yeah.
If true, huge, terrible. Let's have a look at the truth side of this, should we? So there seems to be no evidence to back it up.
None.
And that's the thing here. If you don't have the evidence, because then the flip side could be, what about all the people who will kill themselves because they go through a medical procedure at a young age and regret it later?
Yes.
Where's your stats on that? Oh, there are no stats.
Quite.
If it can be asserted without evidence, it can be...
We should be clear about this. This is Jolyon Morm, who set up the Good Law Project, which is a group that's famous for sort of going on to these high court cases and losing every time. He's the guy who beat that fox to death with a baseball bat dressed in a kimono on Boxing Day morning. I don't want to dig dirt, but I mean, that's pretty extreme. Yeah. And he's also the guy who has just said this outright false thing. I mean, he said there were whistleblowers who were telling him that since the puberty blockers ban, there's been an exponential increase of trans youth suicide. Factually completely wrong. Owen Jones repeated the same lie. I mean, these standards are so poor.
Yeah, and also it's very dangerous. I mean, it goes against the guidance on safe reporting of suicide because, you know, if you tell people, vulnerable people who may have mental health issues, if you tell them that they're going to commit suicide, there's an increased risk of them committing suicide. So it's very irresponsible for Jolyon to do it. There's never been a good person called Jolyon.
No, it's not. It can't happen.
Awful. The only good thing about him is that he killed that fox. But he said, he gave this statement saying, I was not contacted in advance of the statement being released and will obviously need time to respond. I do have difficulties with the figures and analysis and will respond in due course. So it doesn't sound like he was absolutely certain of the figures before he made these grand assertions.
No, he wasn't. And the problem is he's just done a big, 38-part thread whinging about the fact that he's been caught out sort of spreading complete disinformation. Why can't he just say, yeah, I got it wrong. Sorry. Yeah. That would do, wouldn't it?
That's not how arguments work these days, though.
No. Pathetic. Anyway, let's finish this section with the iNews. And Leo, whatever you do, don't mention Rwanda.
So Starmer opens the door to offshore processing of migrants to solve the Channel crisis. Offshore processing of migrants. Where have I heard that before? Oh, yeah, Rishi was going to do it in Rwanda. And apparently Labour said, oh, this is the most cruel and despicable thing that could possibly be done. But Starmer showed an interest in talks with Albanian Prime Minister Edi Rama about the deal between Italy and Albania. So under the agreement between Italy and Albania, thousands of migrants picked up in Italian waters are transported to Albania to have their asylum claims heard. However, a Number 10 spokeswoman, is a woman, said we're not exploring offshore processing. So I don't know if Starmer's dialed back. I think Starmer wants to do some stuff, and he's realised he's not head of the Tories.
Yeah, but he said that he could completely solve the small boats crisis, and apparently the solution is not Rwanda but Albania instead.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a different policy, totally different country.
No, this isn't just about having people who illegally find a way to the UK, sending them to an offshore place and processing them there. It's about letting applications happen before someone has to make it all the way to the UK. There is a weird irony in our situation that you have to be on British soil to apply for asylum, and the journey, people have said, is illegal. So therefore, there are no legal routes.
Yeah,
well,
exactly.
He's saying that
none of them.
But if the presumption, but that means you'd never live up to any of your international requirement to take refugees. Whereas if you can process people, well, wait a minute, if you can process people before they make the journey, then anyone making the journey definitely is illegal. You would have accepted the ones you approve anyway, so there's no great loss there. That's a number that we would have had as successful asylum seekers. So what's the downside?
But there's people who are genuine asylum seekers. They're coming from a horrific a war. a war like Ukraine, and we know, you know, they're culturally not too distant, and once the war's over, a lot of them are going to want to go back. A lot of them already have gone back. And then you've got other people who use the asylum system as a way to get into the country because for some reason they think it's a good idea to get into Britain, usually for economic reasons. And my issue with the asylum system is it becomes, you know, if you've got a country that's failing, you've got a failing societal structure, you don't have prosperity, you've got sectarian wars going on, we're bringing the cultures that lead to that type of society to the UK and, you know, encouraging them to grow.
But if you have that system and you process these before the person's arrived in the UK, you deny that access and they're gone. You don't have to deport them. They're already not in the UK. The current system is that people make their way to the UK, apply for asylum, get denied and never leave.
Yeah, but the system isn't set up to really deal with people who just want to come to the UK because, you know, for economic reasons.
But this would be a step in the right direction. This would stop you having this problem of people who've made it over here and are denied asylum.
What about the story that broke yesterday about the people who were picked up in the French Channel were just returned to France?
Yeah.
Why haven't they been doing that all along?
Because you know why? Because the Home Office is ideologically aligned with Labour. So even though the Tories wanted to do that, they wouldn't do it for the Tories. And now that there's a government that doesn't want to do that, they're happy to do it.
OK. Well, look, that's part 2 decimated. But do come back, because we're going to be talking about queer history, feminist curriculums and indolent migrants. See you in a couple of minutes.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. Humid and cloudy through Saturday, but as we head into Sunday, it's looking mostly dry but considerably fresher than today. That's because weather fronts are moving in from the north and west, and behind that we've got much cooler air arriving through Saturday. Before then, though, a humid night to come for much of England and Wales, as well as some eastern areas of Scotland too. Quite a lot of cloud building in from the west, but across the eastern areas it should stay clear and dry through much of the night. And temperatures here not falling much below 17 or 18 degrees. Further north and west, though, slightly fresher. We've already got that fresher air arriving into the far north and west by tomorrow morning. So after a spell of rain overnight across the Western Isles, it will slowly start to brighten up through the day. The rain not arriving to eastern areas of Scotland till later on in the day, but a wet start to the day across Northern Ireland. Temperatures only around 15 degrees here first thing. North East England, a dry start to the day. Much of eastern and central areas of England will see some sunshine first thing, but that sunshine will turn hazier as the day goes on, and that's because this weather front will continue its journey eastwards through the day. Now, it does bring a risk of some very heavy downpours, particularly across western areas through the day. It's unlikely to arrive into the east until at least Saturday evening, so you should stay dry across eastern areas through much of Saturday, but it's still going to feel quite humid out there, and temperatures across East Anglia in particular could still reach the high 20s. By contrast, across western areas, we're down into the high teens, so a very different feel by the end of the day on Saturday, and that feel will continue into Sunday. Once the rain clears slowly away from the east, actually there's going to be quite a lot of brightness around on Sunday. It should stay dry for most of us, and temperatures will be much more comfortable, much closer to average. However, looking ahead to the start of next week, there's the return of some more unsettled weather with temperatures below average. Bye-bye. Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewbs, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dewbs Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates.
You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. It's your first look at Saturday's newspapers. So we're going to move on now to The Guardian. What's this story? Who's got this one?
I've got this. Trump is desperate to not appear racist. He's enlisted black and brown people to help him, is the coverage of the Republican National Convention. So last time we were on here together, we did spot there was a clip of Trump, and in the background, it's a very diverse selection of audience behind him. And there was a strong possibility that if you move slightly out of that camera frame, like the audience wranglers would have just moved it around. But now, not just that, they've had people like Amber Rose, the model and reality star, and former girlfriend of Kanye West. So not only representing ethnic diversity, but also the mental issues of Kanye West. That community, the unhinged community, also big Trump fans. Amber said, Trump and his supporters don't care if you're black, white, gay or straight, it's all love. And I will believe you about Trump, but some of his supporters, come on, there are definitely some Trump supporters that will not make you a gay cake.
The problem with all of this, I find, is that, you know, the thing is, if he just associated with white people, he'd be called a racist. And now he's not associating just with white people. It's because he's pretending not to be racist. It feels like he can't actually win at this stage.
Oh, yeah, it's an absolute nonsense, but I think everybody sees past it. This is just, you know, left-wing journalists who make probably, you know, minimum wage, just scrambling to try and, like, throw the word racist out, which has been so denatured and you know, it doesn't mean anything anymore. If you look at the left, they're actually much more racist than the right. You've got critical race theory, which is an explicitly racist theory. That's everybody in the left believes in that. They've got the bigotry of low expectations. They've got this identitarian approach to everyone. So, you know, people are treated according to what the colour of their skin is. It's not something that, you know, they've moved past. The whole idea of, like, diversity, equity and inclusion is a racist idea. They say, oh, but diversity brings all these different ways of thinking. It's like, what, are you saying these people think in a different way? Like, that's a really racist thing to do. Trump, people now see, you know, the right, people on the right will just accept you based on your values, based on what sort of person you are. It's a very sort of Martin Luther King type approach, you know, the content of your character rather than the colour of your skin. And Trump has doubled his amount of the black vote that he gets.
And even if it were the case, Steve, that, you know, that there are some people who follow Trump who do have racist views, isn't this quite a good thing for Trump to do, to sort of say, actually, you don't get to have that if you're following me? You know, we have plurality. Isn't that a good thing?
Well, I suppose they're ignoring the issues. I don't think he's saying you don't get to have your racist views. I think he's saying we're a broad church. If you want to vote
your racist views don't reflect us, I think.
Yes, so yeah. I mean, that's certainly not a bad thing. And let's remember, this is from The Guardian, where they do use the word racist so often. They just keep it in the buffer, so Control-V puts it in. It saves typing it all the time.
OK, we're going to move on now. More Guardian now, with the most Guardian story The Guardian has ever guardianed. Leo.
Despair and anger. Minority groups in reform seats adjust to life after its election success. So some Muslim and LGBTQ+ constituents say they would feel uneasy approaching their new MPs, including Nigel Farage. Now imagine if somebody said, you know, some white middle-aged guy said, oh, I wouldn't feel comfortable approaching my Muslim MP. They'd be like, decried as some sort of Islamophobe, some bigot who, you know, you should have an open mind and speak to this MP.
I mean, they're really spinning something here. I mean, this is a guy who says he experienced a racist comment from some people in Clacton, which I don't disbelieve, but that's got nothing to do with Nigel Farage, has it?
Yeah, absolutely. And they're pointing the finger at the Reform Party. They're very gammon-phobic. And they say, they interview somebody. Obviously, the Guardian were wandering around trying to find somebody who'd moan about immigration. And they found somebody who said, all Nigel was talking about was immigration, stopping the boats. He didn't talk about other things. I mean, he did talk about other things. England is facing big problems. Immigration is not the only problem. Inflation, rent, bills, everything. Why do you think they're all going up? You bring in like 1.2 million people in every year. Why do you think it's getting more expensive for rent and there's not enough stuff to go around? And also, you know, the chair of Reform, Zia Yusuf, is a Muslim. So, you know, Reform is a very diverse organisation.
Some of this I don't buy. I mean, the idea that an LGBTQ+, which is a nonsense phrase anyway, but someone who's gay, basically. Yeah. A gay constituent would have a problem, would be scared of Nigel Farage. Or I don't buy it. I don't think that's real.
And there's no evidence in here. If it can be asserted without evidence, it can be refuted without evidence. Argent, they've changed his name, so I don't know why they picked that one. That's interesting. But they changed it. He experienced abuse in the seaside town last year. All right, so
Farage wasn't even there.
Yeah. So, if anything, if you're looking at the evidence, somehow Farage has made it less racist for this guy.
We've seen a 100% drop.
It's a nonsense article. I mean, The Guardian just needs to stop.
Yeah.
Like, really, what's the point of it?
Well, come on, this would be a half-hour show if The Guardian stopped.
Yeah.
And a lot of the far-left pressure groups are secretly far-right. So the groups like Reform are trying to, you know, just put a slight break, have net zero migration to slow it down a little bit so we don't reach the point where there's civil war, whereas, you know, the far-left pressure groups are infiltrated by the far-right and want to accelerate it.
Yeah, that's right. OK, let's move on now to The Independent. It's bad news for students looking to get a degree in grievance studies. Steve, you got an MSc in drag history, didn't you?
Yeah, I did proper degrees, proper science.
You're not one of these Mickey Mouse
Yeah,
degrees.
if you're not studying a science, you're doing a hobby. Goldsmith's accused...
Sound like Margaret Thatcher.
Quietly... Well, she was a chemist as well.
Yeah.
Something in there. We don't have a lot in common. Goldsmith accused of quietly killing off queer and black history degrees. This was a master's degree, which, let's be... A master's degree in black history, where at the end of it, you have to call someone master. There's a whole thing to dig down into there, isn't it? The allegations came to light when Dr. Justin Bengry, the course director of queer history, has been made redundant, but the university itself says they're still doing the course. So the whole story is they're getting rid of this course. The people providing it. You've been fired. That's all
it is. But also, I would have thought, Leo, like, if I go for a job and I say, oh, well, I've got an MA in queer history...
Welcome to The Guardian.
I mean, that's it. I'm limited to The Guardian and the BBC, aren't I, really?
Yeah, pretty much. Or any government organisation. And luckily, the amount of the size of government organisations continues to creep up as we drift into communism. But this Masters in Queer History boasts of having huge cultural importance. It's giving a voice to those who throughout much of history have been denied one. Well, not anymore. I mean, Jesus, do we ever hear from anybody else? I mean, every advert, man, I can't turn round without...
The thing is, it is true that gay people historically have been denied voices. Their texts have been destroyed. Also, they've been actually burnt at the stake. Let's face it. But the thing is, that was a long time ago, and it's covered in history.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you don't... It's not like if you study history, you just ignore all the gay people in history. Otherwise, we wouldn't know anything about Alexander the Great.
Well, and the film about cracking the Enigma code, that would have been a lot shorter, wouldn't it?
It'd been a much shorter film.
But, so this course only started in 2020, and they're the only university to provide it. So maybe that speaks to the success and demand for it. There's a change.org petition that says we must not forget the importance of knowing these lesser-known elements of British history for everybody. Well, it's not everybody, it's a master's course. Like, by definition, quite elite.
OK, we're going to move on now to The Telegraph. Leo, what is this about a feminist professor going to rewrite the curriculum?
Yeah, so more from the world of education. A feminist professor will lead a shake-up of the national curriculum for schools in England, the government has announced. Professor Becky Francis, the chief executive of a learning charity, the Education Endowment Foundation, will chair a wholesale review of the school syllabus to breathe new life into our outdated curriculum. Yay! I mean, this is good because there's not enough far-left feminist ideology in our national curriculum.
There's a lot of quotes in this article, talking about, you know, how girls need to be sort of bolstered at schools and all the rest of it. Girls have been outperforming boys for decades in schools. I'm not sure what this is about. But, Steve, isn't the worry, and this has been a concern, that what the Labour government would do is they would rewrite the national curriculum to sort of bring in their ideology, this sort of very woke identitarian ideology, force schools to adopt the curriculum, including academies, which is what this article says.
Yeah.
Isn't this... I mean, are fears unfounded that we might get this sort of very regressive, identitarian, anti-liberal ideas being seeped into schools?
I'm starting to sweat. I'm getting worried. Because the aim of this, bringing academies under the same curriculum, I was all for. And in this article, it talks about how they want to reform it to give people, and I was thinking like poor working-class kids, a better chance at education. And I hope the person they've brought in to deliver it can, but feminist Professor Becky Francis are words that worry me. But if the aim of this is to get more girls doing STEM subjects, good, because that's fewer of them doing sociology and all these kind of things that seem to lead down this path.
And to be fair, it doesn't say intersectional feminist professor, and that is a key difference, Leo.
But it kind of, I feel like the language is just changing, because they say it specialises in education inequalities and gender stereotypes in the classroom, and that, to me, just sounds like they want to...
Well, not inequity, though. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so, like,
yeah.
It might be the case that she has a good head on her shoulders and she isn't one of these crazed activist loons. Let's hope. Hey, let's hope. That's part 3 done and dusted. Coming up in the final section, we've got odorous celebrities, a new kind of rehab, and a good old-fashioned British orgy. You won't want to miss it.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, weekdays from 9 p.m.
Should Prince Harry have accepted an award named after a US war hero at a glitzy ceremony last night? People begged him not to, but he did it anyway. It's time for tonight's head-to-head. Well, Prince Harry paid tribute to the eternal bond between mother and son as he appeared alongside his wife, Meghan Markle, at the glitzy ESPY Awards, dubbed the Sporting Oscars last night. The Duke accepted the Pat Tillman Award, named after a US war hero, for his Invictus Games work. But Harry's decision to accept the award was shrouded in controversy after more than 76,000 people signed a petition demanding he reverse his decision. Well, speaking last night, Harry paid tribute to Pat Tillman's mother, Mary. But that comes after Mary Tillman slammed his decision to give Prince Harry the gong, saying, "I am shocked as to why they would select such a controversial and divisive individual to receive the award. There are recipients that are far more fitting. These individuals do not have the money, resources, connections or privilege that Prince Harry has." So tonight I'm asking, should Harry have actually accepted the award? Let me know your thoughts. Go to gbnews.com/your say. Tweet me at GBNews and make sure you take part in our poll. But going head-to-head on this now, a former royal butler, Grant Harold, and the journalist and broadcaster, Lowry Turner. Thank you very much. Great to have you both on the show. Lowry, I will start with you. I mean, the mother didn't want Harry to have it, but he did it anyway. What do you think?
I just think it's incredibly tone deaf. He seems to have an amazing ability to not read the room. It wasn't like this was a surprise because the opposition to him getting this award had been growing. So he had the chance to say, actually, I hear what you're saying. I'm not going to accept the award, but he didn't.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan.
GB News royalty with
your perfect start to the weekend.
Lucky us.
Feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions.
That raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return.
And a few surprises along the way.
Might be cold in this studio.
That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners, your first look at Saturday's newspapers. We're going to jump straight back in with the Mirror now. Leo, could this be the end of civilization? At least we'll be going down swinging.
So thousands descend on Sleepy Village for Britain's biggest swingers festival called Swingathon. I love swings.
Yeah, they're great fun.
Yeah, give me a push. Higher. Yeah. Higher. It's so much fun. Oh. A 4-day sex and fetish event. This is nothing to do with swinging at all. So it's in this, they're having a sex and fetish event in a quaint hamlet in the UK countryside, and residents have complained about screaming and moaning because they're doing all this BDSM, like whipping and, sex stuff.
This is the kind of thing I imagine takes place in quiet hamlets.
Yeah.
I mean, why else would you live in a hamlet?
Yeah, and if you're not keeping people awake with you screaming, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
So you might as well get involved. There's two events there. One's the fetish one, and they've got loads of different acts.
Yeah.
The acts, they've got stilt walkers. Unless there's a skirt involved and nothing else, why do you want people on stilts? You're there for the fetish. But they are hiring comedians.
Oh, really?
How have I not been booked?
You should have been booked.
I would have a great
You've got a lot of relevant material. You should give it a go. Look, no one's breaking the law, so not really. A bit of a non-story. Metro next. Steve, it's not just modern films that are stinking up Hollywood.
Yeah, another non-story. More Hollywood stars come forward confirming we don't wear deodorant. This is because Kate Hudson revealed that neither she nor Matthew McConaughey wear deodorant. He admitted that in an interview anyway in 2021.
So what is my response to that?
Yeah, he kind of looks like he doesn't as well. Do you know what I mean? He looks like he's freshening out the surf. This guy doesn't.
I don't wear deodorant. You don't need to.
No, you're right.
No, you don't. But you don't need to. Like, if you don't wear it, your body just naturally doesn't smell.
And also, apparently, deodorant is bad for you because the particles block your pores. So
then antiperspirant.
Is it different?
Yeah. Oh, is that a different thing?
So antiperspirant blocks the pores specifically to stop you sweating. That has aluminium and stuff in it, and you're meant to wear that the night before to block the pores properly for the morning.
You don't need it. I wear a perfume created by monks. And that works perfectly well.
I drink a wine created by monks.
Do you? Buckfast?
Buckfast, yeah, it's great.
Grim stuff. OK, let's move on now. The Times, Leo. And could an anti-flab fad jab send you mad lads to rehab?
Yeah. So patients... Patients are checking into rehab after abusing weight loss jabs. So luxury treatment centres have seen a rise in patients suffering from disordered eating and addiction following treatment with Ozempic and Mounjaro, which I assume is another Ozempic type thing. So people are abusing the medication they're getting where they don't really need it. They're using too much. They're getting side effects such as shakiness. And also after they cease treatment, they're having binge eating attacks. And I know from people that I know who use Ozempic, they're not like, if you do it, you've also got to like stop eating. You've got to stop being stop eating like a pig, and also go to the gym. Stop being lazy. This is why you're fat in the first place, because you eat too much because you're a pig and you don't go to the gym.
Well, it's an appetite suppressant, though. I mean, that's the thing. It's supposed to stop. But the thing is,
people eat through it.
There are no long-term studies about the possible consequences of Ozempic, and so it could potentially be dangerous. So we shouldn't really be surprised, should we, that there are problems here?
It could also potentially not be dangerous, and early studies say it might be linked to a lower chance of getting things like Alzheimer's because the way that it changes your body. I've listened to loads of podcasts on this. There's not many risks associated so far.
Yes.
And if you can be asserted without evidence, you can be refuted without evidence. But what I like about this is there's a guy who's interviewed because he's got some clinic, and he said even though they don't have any patients who've turned up with issues with Ozempic, he knows they've used some other drugs. So there's not even good studies about this actual story. The problem is if you're fat, it's OK to use it. The people who aren't fat using it, that's clearly wrong.
Well, no, but there's people who are lying when they're applying to get the drugs about their weight, and they're actually quite thin already. Yeah. That can't be good.
Yeah, and a lot of people, I mean, I guess with social media and everything, people are really body conscious, but not always the right people.
OK, and now we're going to move on to this story. This is in The Guardian. We're going back to the time of Acid House. Your favourite era, Steve.
Oh, yeah. VR show takes ravers old and new back to early UK acid house scene. No need, they still get the flashbacks. A smoke alarm goes off, they hear the beat, they're throwing some shapes. Ugh. It's called In Pursuit of Repetitive Beats. Set in the West Midlands, you embark on this 8-city tour. It's official, the 1990s are retro again, which is good. I've waited for that. It feels like the 80s have been retro for over a decade. That's unfair.
Yes.
But now, finally, people are going like, oh, the 90s, weren't they great? No,
good.
Remember them.
Are you a fan of this kind of thing, Leo, very quickly?
Well, yeah, I grew up in the 90s, but I don't think the noughties will ever be retro because they didn't have any character, nothing really happened.
That's a very good point. Well, that is all we've got time for, but let's have a quick look at Saturday's front pages before we go. They're all running with pretty much the same story. The Daily Mail has got global IT meltdown shows peril of going cashless. The Telegraph, holidays in chaos after global IT meltdown. The Times has IT companies' error could be terminal for getaways. The Mirror has a day the world stood still. The Express, how on earth did digital pandemic paralyse the world? And the Daily Star is leading with the same story, but they go with the headline, Computer Says No. That is all we've got time for, I'm afraid, for tonight's show. But thanks ever so much to my wonderful panel, Leo Kearse and Steve N. Allen. Headliners, of course, is back tomorrow at 11 o'clock with Steve in the Hot Seat with Paul Cox and Adam Kumas. And, by the way, if you're watching the 5am repeat, then please do stay tuned, because now it's time for breakfast.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening, welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. Humid and cloudy through Saturday, but as we head into Sunday, it's looking mostly dry but considerably fresher than today. That's because weather fronts are moving in from the north and west, and behind that we've got much cooler air arriving through Saturday. Before then, though, a humid night to come for much of England.